Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year, one and all. Welcome to the January 2012 meeting of the New York City Transit Authority, Staten Island Rapid Transit Authority, and AMAB STOA. We have as our guest for the first time Joseph Fox, who is the head of the New York City Police Department Transit Bureau. Welcome, Inspector. Nice to have you with us. Are there any public speakers?
Yes, there are 4 public speakers, Mr. Chair. The first speaker is Murray Bowden. You get to face him today.
At the last public Metro North, I introduced myself as Mike Rowe, the guy with the dirty jobs. Here, I'm Murray Bowden, and I'm here to compliment you on the way you have changed and addressing the issues of repairing the system promptly. You've taken steps that have never been taken before. You're making it possible to get the job done in enormously less time, in enormously less cost, and of course there's going to be some inconvenience. It's minimized. The comments I read in the paper, Carmine, that you've made, I've read, were excellent. I appreciate the fact that you've put it forward in a positive manner. There are others in other committees who don't know how to do that, and it's detrimental to the MTA. So to this committee, I would like to say the changes that are being done to repair the system more quickly and more efficiently are recognized, and I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden.
Is there a motion to adjourn? Well, let's go on to the next public speaker.
The next speaker is William Henderson.
Good morning. I want to speak about the subway weight assessment statistics that are reflected in your book and have been changed, we think, for the better. We're pleased with the improvement in the weight assessment statistics. Now we're seeing the difference between minor delays, medium delays, and major delays in there. We think that's an important step forward and an important step in determining what can be done about these delays. We don't feel we're quite there yet. We're not pleased. We recommended totally with these statistics as presented. We recommended in our 2010 Minutes Matter report that there should be a report identifying the causes of major delays, much in a similar manner to what the commuter railroads have. Right now, all we have is an aggregated cause of delays, and it's based on number of delays rather than severity of delays. We think that's an important thing for the board to have when looking at the operation of the system. As it stands now, the board doesn't have a way of knowing where the major delays lie in terms of different lines, in terms of different areas, and most importantly, the board doesn't have a way to look at the relationships between systems issues and capital improvement needs and major delays, and we think that's important. We've made this recommendation several times, and we're continuing to talk with staff about this, and we look forward to trying to come to some kind of accommodation that provides a little bit better sense of the meaning of this of the delays in terms of the system and how these delays could be rectified. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. The next speaker is David Kupferberg, representing the Committee for Better Transit.
Good morning. The proposed bus service revisions and full restoration of all markets lost in the Eastern Bronx during the June 2010 cutbacks couldn't have been done without the constant and consistent political pressure, especially from City Councilman James Vaca. This is proof that NYCT chose the June 2010 service cutbacks based on perceived political clout, not rational service planning. If so, NYCT would have simply created the BX4A and cut back the old BX14 instead. And if there was this type of political pressure from the Brooklyn neighborhoods of Prospect Heights, Gravesend, and Sheepshead Bay, the B48 and B4 would have been restored to their pre-June 2010 route paths. Although there are a sprinkling of service increases for the coming spring, most of the schedule changes, especially for the X63 and X64, are due to the continuing downward spiral of fare increases and service cuts. This trend can be reversed by rolling back fares. But this cannot occur until the state assumes most of MTA's debt service, bans the MTA from assuming more debt service except those approved by the referendum, and increase taxes on the upper 1%. Let's hope NYCT comes to their senses and shifts the Operations Planning Division from the Office of Management and Budget to Transit Operations, like virtually every mass transit company in the nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kupferberg. The last speaker is Troy Outlaw, representing Councilwoman Inez Dickens.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here to speak on the proposed plan, the bus plan. We want to just make sure that we have no more delays with the M60 or M35, because we're getting a lot of complaints that these buses aren't running efficiently. However, we understand that with the traffic analysis and everything that is being considered in the plan, we want to just make sure that they stay to those times and that people aren't inconvenienced as they already are. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, public speakers. This being the first meeting of the calendar year, we are required under the Public Meetings Law to adopt our work plan so that we can change it monthly thereafter during the rest of the year. The work plan is in Section 2 of the materials. May I have a motion to approve, at least for a while, the work plan? Motion made. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Work plan is approved. Our hardworking, diligent, and speedy repairing President Tom Prendergast.
Carmen Bianco is going to give the operations report, and immediately after giving the monthly performance, he's going to give a brief report on our fast track program and the first initiation of that in January of this year.
Good morning. Let's start with the subway performance indicators. Performance for the month of November and the 12-month average, where appropriate, are as follows. On weight assessment, the 12-month rolling average for system-wide subway weight assessment was 79.1 in November of 11, which represents no change from November of 10. As mentioned at the previous committee meetings, the improvements to the subway weight assessment report began this month. These new reports will not alter our current standard. They simply add detail that shows service gaps not just at the acceptable level plus 25%, but also at the plus 25% to 50% level, the plus 50 to 100% level, and service gaps over 100% of the scheduled headway. The new report can be found on charts 1, 2, and 3, beginning on page 3.5 of your books. And as you look at those reports, essentially what it shows is that we've been pretty steady throughout the year on weight assessment. And when you add the minor to it, we're up and around the 90% range. So most of them fall into the minor range, with the balance of 10% falling into the medium and most severe category. Moving on to on-time performance, terminal on-time performance for November, system-wide weekday OTP was 85.1. That's a decrease of 2.3% from the 87.4 in November of 10. And weekend on-time performance was 88.2. That's down 1.1 percentage point from 89.3 in November of 10. November's OTP was affected by some significant incidents that occurred at critical times and at sensitive locations, and it was a number of different things, including some infrastructure issues, track-related problems. We had a 12-9. So there was a number of issues that relate to what we see in in the on-time performance. There was also significant increases in weekday and late-night maintenance work requiring flagging protection, slow speeds, and/or major rerouting, especially affecting the 2, 4, and 5 routes. A significant increase in maintenance and capital construction activity each weekend in November required complex general orders with significant rerouting of trains. It largely explains the decrease in weekend OTP as compared to 2010, especially on the 2, 4, 5, J, and F routes. Generally, on both weekdays and weekends, lines which saw increases in maintenance and capital work along their rights-of-way experienced declines in operating statistics, while lines which saw decreased maintenance and capital activity showed moderate to considerable improvement in operating metrics. Moving on to key performance indicators, system-wide KPI, service KPI was 83%. That's down 0.7% from 83.7 in November of 10. The PES, Passenger Environment Survey KPI, was 91%, down 1 percentage point from 92 in November of 10. And for Staten Island, their service KPI, which is not reported, but their PES KPI was 84.6, down 4.6% from 89.2 in November of 10. Moving to mean distance between failure, we see a decrease in the month of November at 181,963 miles. That was down 12.6%. November was not a good month for us. We had a few extra delays in there in November compared to the 208,109 in November of 10. The 12-month average was 169,934, down 0.5% from 170,695 for the preceding 12 months. That concludes the operations report.
Thank you, Carmen. Any questions? Chuck?
Carmen, I see you've done a splendid job in improving service on the number 1. But as you have noted, 2, 4, and 5, both on weekday and weekend, have dragged down the entire system-wide statistics, and they are clearly on 2, 4, and 5, the very worst in the entire system. Putting aside what caused the problem in November, what steps are being taken to improve that?
Well, I think there's two things that I think we do have to reflect on November because it was a complicated month. We were doing an extreme amount of work down on the Clark Street line that required us to take the railroad out for 11 nightly GOs and also 3 or 4 weekend GOs throughout November. An extensive amount of track work was done in that area. We had to move a portion of that service over to the Lex line in order to make that happen, and that really drove the numbers both on the weekdays and the weekends for the lines you're referring to.
What are we going to do it better in the month of January?
I think as we complete the operations report, I'm going to move into going to talk a little bit about Fast Track because I think in part that's the answer in order to make sure that we get the required maintenance takes place, get the reliability where it needs to be. I think that's one of the answers that we'll share in a moment.
I think you've done a splendid job on Fast Track. Let me ask you one more question, highly parochial. I notice again at page 3.21 that the Bronx has the worst subway stations in the system, with KPI statistics far and away the worst in the system. And I'd like to know what you guys got against us.
We don't have anything against you. I think part of what's going on there is, and frankly, we're working on it as we speak. Part of the score that you see that's low is around the area of information. And essentially what happens there is that because of the stations are very tight, we were missing subway signs, subway maps, and those maps are being installed as we speak. I think we've got 16 or 17 stations complete. That should drive that score up once we see that. So that's one area. And the second area is that if we have a cleaner mark off and not make their particular shift, we are backfilling that, and we're making sure those stations get cleaned. So there's two things that we are doing to try to drive those scores.
That's one of the problems is appearance, and I know that Tom and you have paid particular attention to several of the worst of the stations in the system, but I do implore you, please let's get those stations cleaned up and fixed up, do something. The
public has a right.
You know, Chuck,
know
if you and Fred would speak up a little bit more about the Bronx, maybe Carmen would begin to pay a little bit more attention to you.
Be assured, Fred speaks even louder than I do.
I do appreciate the invitation, Mr. Chairman.
Andrew?
Chuck, you need to take a ride on the Sea Beach line if you want to see some stations. Anyway, on this new gap indicator on the weight assessment, as you heard from one of our public speakers, it's a definite improvement, but wouldn't it be great if we could find out the cause of some of these 73% and 78%? Like, is it late track gangs, or is it fires, is it sick or unruly passengers? We have no indication what the figures actually mean, and if we knew that, I think it would be helpful.
Okay. I mean, we could
if we can do that by line, I think it would be really helpful.
We have that information. It's a question of how much we put in the book, but we certainly have that information. And we use that information to determine whether or not that's a one-time occurrence as a result of work going on the right-of-way that we won't experience next month, or that an onset of a developing trend, and we take actions accordingly.
I think just to go along with what Tom's saying, when you look at just 1 or 2 days worth of information, it can get pretty large fairly quickly, and it's just so much data to try to produce and make sense of.
Our chief parliamentarian has told me that I omitted approval of the minutes of the December meeting. The minutes are in section 1, and you will notice that there are only 5 pages this time instead of 15, because we're combining the minutes of all 3 of our authorities. This should save us $3 a month in printing costs. Is there a motion to approve the minutes for December? Second? All in favor? Any opposed? The minutes are approved.
Carmen, if you could give the fast presentation on Fast Track, please.
Sure, yes, sir. Fast Track is an initiative I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about. It essentially was a program to take the tracks out of service over 4 consecutive nights on the Lex line. This occurred on January 9th through the 13th. We were able to remove the tracks from service at 10 p.m. and work on them until 9 a.m. until 5 a.m. in the morning. During this outage, this is typically a much different way than we're used to working, because once we had the trains off the tracks and out of the area, we were able to get in there and work without the ability to have to clear up for trains or put out flagging. So as you can imagine, this created a lot of, it improved safety for us, it improved the ability for us to be efficient and to be productive. And in essence, we were able to complete jobs that would literally have taken weeks, if not months, to complete. So we were able to, over the course of the 4 nights, in the 3 months of planning that went into this, we had identified about 324 tasks that we wanted to accomplish during those 4 evenings. A task could be replacing rail, or it could be replacing floor tiles in a station, or relamping, or cleaning up tracks. Each one of those was a separate task, and through the course of those 4 evenings, we were able to accomplish each and every one of them. It was, and I think anybody that had an opportunity to go down and actually witness what this looked like, it was absolutely amazing for someone like myself, who's been in this business for many, many years, to walk down into a train station, and no matter which direction you looked, all you saw were hard hats and people working hard at doing what they do, and it was just truly incredible. We received positive press for the most part over this, and again, a lot of planning went into it. And I'll talk a little later about the cost benefit, some early numbers that we're seeing that looks like the efficiency actually helped us to the tune of about $600,000. Moving on to the next slide. In the planning for this, we knew this was going to be different, and we knew that it would interfere and interrupt our customers, so we wanted to make sure that we got out there very, very early with our message around what we were going to do and the impacts it would have. And this took on in a couple of different ways. The outreach went on to, as you see on this slide, we had signs out, we were doing seat drops, we were doing letters to businesses and elected officials, we ran press releases, we actually ran some ads in some of the commuter newspapers throughout the city. So people were trying to give folks as much advance notice that we were going to actually take on this work. Next slide, please. Moving on, we also, through the help of the media, this was out there. Again, there were stories on it, repeated stories on this. So again, just giving the public as much opportunity as possible to see that we were going to start this work. I'd like to go over some of the highlights of the work, and you'll see some photographs here. These are actual photographs of the work as we observed it during those 4 evenings. And you can see it's just a sea of individuals out there that are working hard. But some of the highlights in terms of track, and they're laid out by the functional area within the Department of Subways. In terms of debris, our track department removed over 20,000 pounds of debris that they collected. They were able to scrape and clean 19,000, almost 5 miles of track. Not only clean it, but actually scrape all the muck and the dirt that accumulates on the concrete. Now, in our normal environment, we'd clean every 2 weeks through the stations, but the ability to go down and actually scrape them would be impossible in our routine work. So this was actually an opportunity to go down and really do some extensive work. We were able to replace ties and rails and actually a switch on the number 6 line leading out of City Hall. In third rail, we were able to address a number of conditions that we had wanted to get in there and address for a long time. You can see the numbers. From a power perspective, we were able to inspect 55 manholes. That's a page here. Signals, which is always very difficult to get in there and do our work in terms of inspection and maintenance. We were able to inspect over 311 locations. That would have taken us a considerable period of time in order to do that. From an infrastructure's perspective, we sound and tapped, looking for loose concrete. At 4 stations, we were also able to clean the drains. At 8 stations, and grout water leaks that we've had that have been out there for some time. You can see that we've addressed elevators and escalators and cleared up a number of conditions there. We were able to check all of our emergency phones and emergency alarms through this location, change some CCTVs that our conductors use to place trains on platforms, to spot the trains on platforms. And then, moving over to page 6, from a station's perspective, we were actually able to repair and relamp 5 stations. Very obvious if you were to walk into those stations the next day that change has taken place. But even something that we've been that's bothered us for a long time, and we just had to figure out how we can get in there and do it, was actually scraping, peeling paint. And during the course of those 4 evenings, we scraped over 12,600 square feet of peeling paint, and actually painted over 17,600 square feet of ceilings. Some of those were over trackways, very difficult for us to get in. We replaced broken steps and repaired steps at 15 different stations, and it just goes on and on and on. The bottom line is that for us to, I'm just not certain how long, and we're trying to do this analysis right now, how long would it have taken us to do this if we did it in our normal and customary way using flagging. Moving on, as we look at some very, very early preliminary cost, and again, we're still working on this, we see that the bottom line is that there were quite a bit of efficiencies in doing this work this way. For instance, if we just look at our maintenance away work, it would have been over $1.3 million to do it in our normal and customary way. We were able to do the labor cost piece for about $700,000. So you can see as you look through those numbers significant productivity efficiencies. And I have to say that when I was down there, and I was out almost every evening, our employees, people were able to really get into their work because they didn't have to worry about clearing up. So even from everybody's perspective, people were saying to me, it's really nice to be able to get in here and not have to worry about clearing up every 5 minutes for trains. We're really getting a lot done. From a customer's impact on slide 8, ridership's transition and reaction to the closures appeared smooth. On the very first night, we did have some congestion at Grand Central that was quickly addressed, and we kind of fine-tuned our way of dealing with that for the subsequent evenings. Most of our customers found their way without assistance. And one of the things that we made a conscious decision, because we knew that by taking this outage, we were going to ask our customers to move to adjacent lines to go over and take the 7th Avenue line. So we did our level best to not have any maintenance or any GOs on those lines so that we could make sure they were clear sailing for the nights that we had this out. We even ordered some extra service out there in terms of gap trains for the N and R, but our learning after the week was that they weren't well utilized. So that's something we'll look at as we move to address this at other lines. Moving to page 9, I won't read these, but this is just some quotes from customers that had some interesting things to say about the work. One case, please do this on my line. We want this to happen on my line. And you can see we had the other end of the spectrum, someone in the lower left there that felt it wasn't such a good idea because it really inconvenienced their day and what they needed to do. So, again, overall, good positive feedback from our customers. And lastly, this is the schedule for the balance of the first quarter. We'll be moving to the 7th Avenue line in a couple of weeks, and then over the 6th Avenue line. You can see the boundaries or the limits, and then finally to the 8th Avenue line in mid-March. In closing, I think that what I would like to say is that I know this inconvenienced many of our customers, and I just want to apologize for the inconvenience that it caused, because I realize it does create an extra move, or people are just not able to catch the trains they expect to catch, and so you get my apology for that. But I also want to thank all of our employees in the Department of Subways and all the support folks that helped make this possible. Our employees, our supervisors and managers just did a phenomenal job to pull this off. And as I said, we not only set out to do 324 tasks, we accomplished it. So I'm very, very proud of my organization and very proud of New York City Transit. I think we have found a new way to really help us maintain our railroad, get the required work that needs to take place out there, get it accomplished, and hopefully help us make this railroad more reliable. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen, and we are really impressed with how you delivered, and the Department of Subways delivered this enormous project, and that you are just not doing business as usual. You're trying to improve things at a huge amount of extra time and effort. My only question is, in the last 4 weekends that you were down there, could you complete the 2nd Avenue subway? Any questions for Carmen? Andrew?
That was a rhetorical question.
Carmen, there's no doubt that you were able to accomplish a great deal, and this was great. Obviously, you can only shut down a complete subway line when you're in a place like Manhattan, when you have other major trunk lines, and which gives you an outlet for other riders. If you're planning this for the outer boroughs, it's a whole different ballgame there. If you do all 4 tracks or all 3 tracks, as the case may be. But because you're selling this as so much more efficient, and because one of the reasons you're doing this on weeknights is because of the ever-rising weekend ridership, would you be able to tell riders we saved 32 weekend diversions by doing this, or something to that effect? I mean, it would really be nice for us to know what was actually saved.
Well, I think we're going to have to do a number of these. I mean, this is the first time ever.
You just knocked your mic.
This is the first time ever in the history of this organization we've done this. So we need to actually have 3 or 4 more experiences before we can ascertain how successful it is and how we can improve upon it and what the impacts are. Certainly when you go into the outer boroughs where you don't have as many parallel or redundant services, we're going to be actually asked to do something different, because we're going to need to do some of the similar type work, but we won't be able to be constructed just this way. Right. So it's our intention to come back to the committee after we have 2 or 3 of these under our belt with a more macro analysis in terms of how effective it's been, how we've made changes to it, and how we may do it slightly different with experiences in the outer boroughs.
Chuck?
I wonder if you've factored in yet, and perhaps you have not, when you would have to return to do the same job in the same exact location? Do you have to do it twice a year, once a year? Have you gotten to the point of enough information to be able to reach a conclusion?
I can share, and Carmen can share some anecdotal comments with you, and then you can see what we're faced with. In the issue of scraping track and scraping the trackway where you've got built-up muck and dried mud, we asked track people that had been here 20 years when the last time, for example, was done at Astor Street, and they couldn't remember when it was last done. So we're doing things from a maintenance standpoint that haven't been done in years. And so we need to determine how fast that muck builds up. But certainly it built up over 20 years. So a task like that, you may say, you probably don't have to come back quarterly and do, but you may have to come back yearly to stay ahead of it. But it's dependent upon the conditions. Where you have high water and where you have muck being delivered into the system, you may have to do it quarterly. But on some of these tasks, that's one of the reasons why we have to go through 2 or 3 of these cycles before we can ascertain what the cycle of repetitivity should be.
You've clearly done a superb job, and the innovative ideas that went into it deserve great kudos. My question is, as you go down the road, try and think carefully about whether, as a programmatic matter, this sort of thing has to be done at one level or another every 6 months, every 3 months, every 2 years, whatever. Let us know.
Absolutely. Well, I think we would, whatever we learn from this, we would be part of the maintenance culture and the way we construct our work programs. One of the things, I mean, maybe in some people's mind, whose idea this was, and I think it'd be worthwhile sharing at this point. We have a strategic initiatives group, which has been was actually transplanted from the MTA down into New York City Transit, and they work collaboratively with the chiefs of the different operating departments, and it came out of that group, this idea to do this. And we need to do more of those types of activities, because sometimes you're so close to the forest you can't see the trees. We may not have thought of this particular activity, but emanating out of this group, it was a group of people, not one individual. That's where it came from. And it forced us to take a look at a different way of going about doing something with all these conflicting priorities.
Ira?
Yeah, I second Commissioner Merdler's question. That's what I was wondering, is how often could this be done or should be done, and also, Andrews, how much is the rider saving, because the perennial diversion situation is very annoying to most passengers. A comment on the handout here. I think this is great. I think it should be, I don't know if it's posted on the web, what the work that was completed. I noticed that's what you've been doing over the past year, is when there's a major diversion, showing the passenger, telling them exactly what was done. And I appreciate if you do that on the 7 line especially, because, you know, that's a very sensitive. You're shutting down the tunnel for the entire weekend, for 11 weekends. So it'd be good for people to see what's being done and the predicted benefits of it.
That's probably one of our weaknesses. We have not done a good job of telling people what we've done after we did it. We'll tell them what we're doing before, but we don't necessarily tell them what we accomplished, and we should. And if you're outside the station, for example, in the tunnel, you wouldn't know unless you had some ability to see it. So we should go out of our way to tell people what we're doing.
In terms of our fast track initiative, we were putting up daily updates in terms of what we were able to accomplish.
Oh, great! No, it's a new. That's rather. I mean, in the past year, I noticed you're doing it. It'd be good to see it in other places too. These make a big.
All right, folks. I think we're ready for Cheryl Kennedy on safety.
Okay. The safety results were as follows: the subway customer accident rate remains the same at 3.0 for the 12-month period. In the month of October, the accident rate decreased by 7.8%, moving to 2.83 per million subway customers from a rate of 3.07 in 2010. The employee lost time accident rate decreased 6.9% for the month of November 2011 versus November 2010. However, the rolling 12-month rate increased by 7.1% over the previous 12-month period. There were 66 confirmed fires for the month of November, down 27.5% from the previous year. Additionally, fires decreased over the preceding 12 months by 4.3%. 100% of all fires were categorized as being low or average in severity for the month of November.
Questions for
Yeah, I have
Cheryl?
a quick question. It's two-part. I noticed that the fires resulted primarily from debris. And my question, part one, is what, if anything, has come out of that experiment of removing materials from the station, the garbage cans from the stations? Has it increased debris, decreased it? Because debris is here a major factor. And secondly, what effort is being made beyond that to try and get debris and the things that cause debris, like food, out of the stations?
There are a number of initiatives that we take on a full-time basis in order to make that happen. Within, obviously every day we have station cleaners that are scrapping platforms and removing the trash from the station itself. But in addition to that, in the subway, we actually have a plan in place every 2 weeks to get to each of the station tracks and actually clean the envelope within the station environment. We have a number of employees from our track organization that do that. Beyond that, we have 2 vacuum trains. They're both up in age. They're both about 15 years old, so they're at the end of their life. But we use those trains to the best of our ability to go down and cover a couple of miles of track, and they can actually pick up as trash is blown into the tunnels. They actually have the ability to agitate it and actually clean it. So there's a number of things that we do. But if you do get an accumulation down there, that could be one of the bases for what for the fires that you're seeing.
Because subway fires, obviously inside stations, have an awful potential. Do you work with FDNY to do anything in terms of policing fires, putting out fires, fire safety, and the like?
Well, I'll defer that to Cheryl. I think she's in a better position to answer that, but I think the answer is absolutely yes.
Yes, we do work with the fire department. We also, track our fires and have trends. If we do see a station that we see a number of fires, we may send that to the fire department because we have had some incidents of arson. So we do work very closely with the fire department.
Fire department maintains for buildings a record of the construction of the building, age, areas, and the like. Does it have comparable records on the stations?
With respect to the fire suppression systems in the areas, yes. They also have the layouts of all the stations.
That's what I want.
Yes. They also have that as well as with the command center so that they can identify exactly what they're dealing with if we do have a fire.
Okay.
And Cheryl, if I can take that one step further, I mean, the relationship not only goes to that point where they can actually see almost on a real-time basis the configuration of a station in order to know tactically how to address the issue, but we also do a lot of reviews after an incident. What went right, what went wrong, what could we have done better. So that relationship is there.
All right, I believe we are now ready for the debut. It's his first meeting. Chief Joseph Fox, please remember that and be nice to him. He might not come back again. Joe, welcome.
Can you hear me? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. LeBeau. Thank you all. I'd like to introduce myself, and then I plan on going over the 2011 year-end statistics, and there's some steps and strategies that we've employed over the last few months and will continue with throughout the upcoming year. My name is Chief Joseph Fox. I'm in my 31st year with our NYPD, and my last 11 years have been the CO of Patrol Borough Brooklyn South, and I'm very excited and happy to be here as of August of last year. Excited and proud of the work I see from the young men and women of the Transit Bureau, and happy that with the new relationships, with the professional relationships that I found, many with people in this room, including Tom and Carmen and the whole team and this board. The year-end 2011, as we were on pace for reduction all year, we wound up with a 16% increase, and again, as we've covered here, those were fueled by theft, targeted theft of electronics. We had a 2.9% reduction overall in enforcement, and that's with a 10% reduction in personnel that we operated most of 2011 with. We had a better ending, a better month in December, where we were actually down up only 2 crimes, so we're heading in the right direction towards the end of the year. And we, as far as the electronics, in 2009, 35% of the property that was targeted, whether through grand larceny or robbery, were electronics, iPhones, iPods, computers, handhelds, Blackberries. That number has gone up to 49%. So almost half of the crimes are motivated by people seeking to steal, rob these electronics on the subways. So part of our response and strategies are some operational, and community notice and education is clearly critical and very, very important. Some of the concerns with the last few board members, and I discussed the 10% less cops that we were working with in 2011. Commissioner Kelly assigned 243 officers from the last graduating class to the Transit Bureau. That's a real large influx. It's a larger allotment than we've had in a number of years. And they're going to be put to good use. They're still in their training mode. They've been out there full with the training and chart changes and their graduation. They've been, on today, they're in their 13th day on the streets, and which brings our total head count to 2496 in the Transit Bureau. A couple of things that they've to start their off to these officers. Every one of the 243 have at least one arrest in a relatively short time. We know the importance of enforcement in the transit system. In one case, besides going after criminals, on January 14th in Times Square, they were doing in a meal break. Police officers Adam Geshlak, Ramutala Mashriki, and Kenneth Lugallo, they came across a pickup of a male who had stopped breathing. They started chest compressions, and they got an AED, an automatic external defibrillator, and were actually able to revive him. And he's in a hospital now in serious condition, but alive. In one case, through a theft of service stop, police officer Anthony Jaquez arrested a Shamil Burns, who was wanted for connection with a shooting in the Bronx of an 11-year-old child. Him and another co-defendant, and the Bronx detectives put his name out in what we call an I-card, which means if the name pops someplace, we know he's wanted 2 days before, and Officer Jaquez came across him and put him into custody. Our special operations, what we find is similar to the success that Commissioner Kelly has had with CRVs and surge operations, where you see all the RMPs in one spot and cops all massing for one mission. We find that that's effective in policing to deter crime as well. So that concept, we find that team-led enforcement with a focus on coming in contact with those who would do crimes has been very successful for us. We're in the process now, I think it was mentioned at the last meeting by Chief Monahan, we had just finished an Operation Toolbox. We're in the middle of one now, which is a high focus on enforcement, both on the trains, the platforms, and at the entry points, which is mostly theft of services. The decoy operations, we've done 9 so far this year with 5 arrests. We did 54 in 2011, which was compared to 27 in 2010. I place a lot of value in decoy arrests. We've had more success recently. We have 3 times 51 officers in all the bureau trained now. We've tripled the number of officers trained to do decoys. What we find with the decoys is, in some cases, we've able to arrest some pretty hardened criminals with significant backgrounds. Snatching a phone from our decoy. Jocan Moreira He arrested at 51st and Lex on December 22nd. He's got 15 priors, including grand larceny, assault, criminal possession of stolen property, and felony drug sales. But we also have some cases where we have 15, 14, and 16-year-old first offenders that we know of who will seize the opportunity, seeing a phone that somebody who's careless with their phone, and in these cases are decoys, and will make the snatch. In one, in Brooklyn, on the Q line near the Beverly Road station, the backup teams with the decoy actually saw two of the three perps that were eventually arrested actually mocking the decoy behind her back as she walked by, laughing at how easy it appears to grab that phone. So these were 15-year-old kids. So we're dealing with our hardened criminals, and we're dealing with people with just grabbing the opportunity, which is why our community notice and our education really is critical. We welcome any media accounts with incidents and crimes and arrests in the subway, because with every one there's some language talking about the accessibility and sometimes carelessness. So many of us have with the phone sitting on our laps and such. We have these operations where we're doing similar with the surge mentality, as opposed to what we've done in the past, where we'll have a crime prevention officer in each district spend part of the week going out and communicating with people as best as possible. What we do now is we put teams of officers together 3 times a week, and we have anywhere from 15 to 25, and they'll target one borough, one line, combination of setting up a table at the entry point and riding trains and engaging people as best as possible. As we know, subways are very busy places, and we look to create the kind of spectacle with these operations so that people can't enter the station without seeing, and hopefully piquing their interest and accepting our officers, engaging them. The flyer that we had made back in September, I have a copy of it here. It's obviously smaller. This is just a visual. This is what we've given out. We've given thousands of these out, and as you can see here, this is as a classic time of opportunity as the train door is closing, and while a phone is visible, and you see the person doing the snatch. We've also got our video unit has produced a DVD. It's about a 20-second loop that we're trying to put out in as many places as possible. Thank you, Tom and Carmen. I think it's on your websites. And if we could run it now just to give a quick shot.
yourself a victim. Stay alert. Keep electronic devices out of sight. Call 911.
So that when we put that DVD in, it repeats over and over again. So what, besides putting it on whatever websites we could, it's on our Transit Bureau websites, on the department website. We're also in the process of acquiring some TV screens that we could put at our crime prevention tables when we do those operations. On that video and a lot of this community notice, of course, we welcome any suggestions or anybody has any ideas on how to participate in getting that word out. It's just pretty prevalent that it's, as we've said before, it's reflective of a safe environment where people feel comfortable enough to have such expensive items visible. But our job is to kind of instill confidence, but at the same time adjust that comfort level so people are not, in some cases, unknowingly reckless. So combined with our new group of officers, which is a huge influx. They're still in the training mode. Decoy operations, these special operations, reverse sales, where we go in and actually try to sell stolen property to store owners, and enough community notice. We feel we're heading in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief Joseph Fox. We know that you will apply the same excellent police work that you applied when you ran the Brooklyn operation for the New York City Police Department, and that deployment is the key to effective crime prevention here. And so we're really delighted to have you, and your reputation precedes you. Any questions for Chief Fox? Chuck?
Chief, first, welcome, and we're fortunate to have you on board.
Thank you, sir.
I have a couple of questions, if I may. How does the head count for 2011 and proposed for 2012 compare with the immediately prior years?
With, you mean to 2010?
10. Well, for example, if you have your 240 aboard, will you have more police officers deployed in 2012 than you had in 2011, for example?
With the 243 we got, that puts us right about even with what we had in 2010.
And that was 10% down from the year before.
Right, so throughout 2011, we lost 10% of that 2010 number. So right now, we're right around where we were in 2010.
So you're really trying to make do with less in terms of bodies to function, am I right?
Less in
less than you had the years before.
Well, we're on now. We have what we had in the year 2010.
But you don't have what you had in 29 and 8 and the rest, right?
No, probably not. The exact number I don't have though. But that's a an attrition level that's really across the board.
But you have an increase in the crime statistics since 2007, now starting to develop. And the question I have is there anything we can do to see if we can help you get some more police officers?
Well, with this last class, Mr. Mulder, the police commissioner was actually very attentive to the trends in the Transit Bureau. So that number 243 is a pretty large number. But one way to help and is as best as possible with our community notice. On that note, I want to also mention that I want to thank Tom and Carmen who put out several memos reminding the conductors to do these public service announcements every 15 minutes. Among one is looking any suspicious packages to report, as well as guarding your valuables.
Some years ago, the police department, when it was faced with a rash of thefts of mirrors from cars, hubcaps from cars and the like, went about to provide for a program under which identifying indicia were put on hubcaps, on mirrors and the like, so as to make it a little bit more difficult for thieves to then fence their goods. My question is, Apple now offers, without charge, to inscribe your name on the back of any iPod or Apple product or the like. Can we try and harness that willingness on the part of Apple and other entities, perhaps, so as to provide identification on these electronics that are stolen, and thereby maybe either deter the thievery or enable you to do that which you are trying very hard to do?
That's an excellent suggestion, sir. And as far as the etchings, we encourage people, any apps that they may have. We find that helpful in the investigations, and we actually are constantly reinforcing the training of our officers when they first encounter a victim. To one of the first questions among description and other details is, do they have any such apps? And then we have mechanisms at each district where we'll be able to log that person onto a computer to try to locate the phone. As far as the etchings, with these crime prevention flyers that we're putting out, we since we started in September 26, 2011, and that's a joint operation with the Community Affairs Bureau, we gave out 248,200 of those handouts. And we also offer, and I'm glad you made this point, because we also, at those booths and those tables, we offer cell phone etchings as well. And we've done 268 in those couple of months in the end of 2011, and so far this year, 59,000 flyers and 65 cell phone etchings. But that's also part of our community awareness and notice that we'd like to emphasize.
Can we also get out the information, at least as to Apple products, and it may be true as to the others, I'm not here to do a plug for Apple, that they have an application that will allow you to track exactly where that piece of equipment is and get out information that everybody ought to put that on their electronics. My purpose in all of this being to deter and to help you apprehend, because you're doing the best you can with what you got.
Well, however that word gets out, and any part, that and any part of community awareness is helpful to us. And
Thank
you
you
just
very
made that point. Thank you.
All right, Andrew.
Yeah, hi. Welcome, Chief. We've all seen the tables set up in some subway stations with 3 or 4 police officers. If somebody really wanted to do harm to us, they would just turn around, walk back out of the station, and go to the next nearest station, which might be as little as 4 or 5 blocks away in Midtown Manhattan in any event. So my question is, when you set up a table in one of these stations, are you also setting up tables in adjacent stations to really make it obvious that you're locking down a particular area? Otherwise, it's sort of just as easy to turn around and go into another station. And also, an adjunct to that, are you spending any additional personnel into unstaffed stations, of which there are so many now? Because as I discussed with you earlier, I'm seeing more fare evasion than I've seen in a very long time.
Mr. Albert, you did discuss the fare evasion, and after this meeting, I'd like to discuss mechanisms, how you could communicate directly to me in spots that you're seeing maybe more than others. As far as those tables, you make a great point, because our mobility and our deployment is critical. And to give you an idea how important that is, and one of the reasons why it's the Transit Bureau officers and commanders are up to this challenge. On an average given week or month, 61%, more than half of each crime that occurs, in each of those cases, those 61%, it's the first crime that occurred at that location for this past 28 days. So therefore, it's likely that more than half the crimes, if we have a crime today in one spot, won't happen for at least 28 days. So obviously the system is mobile, and our criminals can be mobile. So we have to respond accordingly. As these operations are set up now, they also rove. So, they move from, we'll set up a table for an hour or two, then move it. And there's also a component where blue-shirted community affairs officers are on the trains, going up and down the lines, and then back to that spot. But you make a good point, and I'll certainly consider how to make that even more mobile. And you asked also about the unstaffed stations, and obviously that would require extra attention. That's part of our day in, day out deployment based on where those crimes are and where the tendencies for crimes to happen are.
Thank you, Chief. We don't want to derange our subsequent committees, so we'll go back now to Tom.
Mr. Chairman, may I? Just one.
Certainly.
Thank you. Chief, let me also welcome you to your first meeting and tell you publicly what I've told you privately. I very much appreciate your willingness to work very closely with us, and you're being forthcoming on the information. That's terrific. It's very good news, I think, that at least we're back up to 2010, knowing that everybody is taking a hit, and confident that you'll make very good use of those new officers. One of the things that strikes me, at least, in the breakdown of crime on the system is I think an absence of knowing exactly where that's occurring, by line or by borough. Perhaps in your future breakdowns, you could just give it to us a bit more discreetly, so that, you know...
Well, I could, as far as by borough, I could give you that now, and I didn't intend on omitting. It's actually in my notes. I just went over it. But, well, let me see. Brooklyn, we have, in the year 2011, 37% of our crimes was in the borough of Brooklyn. Manhattan, 35%. So Manhattan and Brooklyn is essentially two-thirds of our, more than two-thirds of our crime experience. The Bronx, 15%, 15.7%, and Queens, 12%. And I could get back to you by district if that's what you wanted. I could do that next meeting or before.
Well, going forward, in the preparation of
Certainly.
of this, we could break it down a little further. It might help us.
Good point.
Be more helpful to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Very brief. Yeah, I think that information was in the Safety Committee report this month. I saw a district-by-district breakdown, crime statistics. Okay.
Hit it, Tom.
Finance preliminary November 2011 fare box revenue was $306 million, 1.4 million or 0.5% above forecast. Year-to-date fare box revenue was $3,322 million, 15.2 million below forecast, mostly due to the effects of Hurricane Irene in August. The average non-student fare in November 2011 was $1.64, and in constant 1996 dollars, the average fare fell from $1.38 in 1996 to $1.11 in 2011.
Okay, folks, remember that now, that in 1996, when the fare was $1.50, the average fare in 1996 dollars today is $1.11, right? And we're offering them a lot more now than we did in 1996. Exactly right.
Preliminary November 2011 operating expenses before depreciation exceeded forecast by $15.7 million, 3.2%, due mostly to the unfavorable timing of both retiree health care subsidy receipts and health and welfare expenses, partly offset by several non-labor underruns. Year-to-date operating expenses were $21.8 million below forecast, due primarily to several non-labor underruns, including the impact of lower paratransit completed trips, partly offset by higher overtime expenses due to Hurricane Irene, and additional maintenance and vacancy coverage requirements, and the unfavorable timing of retiree health care subsidy receipts. Ridership, November 2011 ridership totaled 196.8 million, 0.2% above forecast, and year-to-date ridership was 2.117 billion, 0.9% below forecast. November 2011 average weekday subway ridership was 5.5 million, an increase of 2.8% from November of the prior year. This was the highest average weekday subway ridership of any November in over 40 years. The average 2011 average weekday local bus ridership was 2.2 million, a decrease of 3.4% from November of 2010, and average weekday express bus ridership was 41,000, an increase of 0.6% from November 2010. November 2011 average weekday paratransit ridership was 30,000, an increase of 2.7% from November 2010. An early look at the total year 2011 financial results show that total fare box revenue was $4.9 million, or 0.1% above final estimate. The preliminary 2011 total operating expenses were $3.6 million higher than the final estimate, and these preliminary results are under review. That completes the financial part of the committee report.
Any questions?
Ask one question. Tom, would you look at page 4.40 with respect to capital program status? Is which you've indicated about 50% roughly of the programs planned have moved forward. Is the delay because of, or the incompletion for economic reasons? You don't have enough money?
Fred's going to give the capital program report, and I'll let him respond to your question at that time with respect to progress program against plan.
All right, you're up, Fred.
Okay. Good morning. Looking at capital results, commitments through the month of November 2011 total approximately $40 million. Three major projects to speak of, one including the full ADA accessibility at the Utica Avenue station on the Fulton Street Brooklyn line that covers the A and C train. Also a project to replace 3 escalators in Lower Manhattan at 3 separate subway stations, and a rehabilitation of power centers at our Coney Island Overhaul Shop, which is our largest rail shop. Completions for the month totaled $324 million, the major one being the rehabilitation of the East 180th Street Yard signals and interlocking on the Dyer and White Plains Road line affecting the 2 and 5 in the Bronx. It's important to note that that project is probably the most significant and most complex reconfiguration project that I've been involved with in my transit career. That's the location where the 5 tracks coming down from White Plains Road and Dyer merge to 3 going south. We have a rail yard storage on the east and the west side of the line, a rail barn at that location. It's a project that's been underway for the last 4 years with significant service diversions that supported that construction. It was a major success by completing it within that original time frame, and should do a lot to improve not only service reliability but recovery from incidents on that line as well.
Would you like to be in charge of the 2nd Avenue subway?
Not right now.
Okay.
Okay. I'm doing. I got my hands full right now, Mr. Chairman. To speak to your question, Commissioner Merdler, this year's capital program contained the most significant amount of rail vehicle and bus vehicle purchases. And what's driving the delay in that accomplishment is really a couple of those key major procurements that have carried into this calendar year. When you look at what we did accomplish, when we get done from a project standpoint, we will probably do about 90% of the total number of projects that we set out to do, which is a significant increase over previous years. But because of the large value of those rail car purchases and the bus purchases, that's why the value is less than 90%.
Forgive me. I'm not faulting it. I'm just trying to figure out, is this driven by an economic concern, or is it driven by an inability to execute, or what?
No, it's driven really by Steve and the operating folks' effort to get the best price for the value of the vehicles. So it's taken a little bit longer than we expected, but I think it'll pay dividends for us.
Okay.
Thank you. Fellow board members, I'm sorry to disturb you, but we have some very small procurements to approve this month. We have to approve them all. Steve?
Good morning.
Where are you? Oh, there you are.
The procurement package this month, which represents both New York City Transit and MTACC procurements, includes 11 actions totaling $15.2 million in expenditures.
I have one question, may I, Mr. LeBeau?
Certainly.
On the procurement for the court reporters, Veritech, the argument is made in taking Dietz rather than the people you've been using, Veritex's, their fee is lower. And my simple question is it accurate? Is it produced as promptly by Dietz? Is it as good a product? Because if it isn't accurate and it isn't produced promptly, your lawyers are going to lose cases.
Well, they're certainly accurate. The issue was that the buildup that we had, because of the issue we were having with another contractor, facilitated using Veritex over Dietz only because Veritex was able to demonstrate that they were able to turn the product around quicker. And for the law department, that was imperative at the time. We've subsequently reduced or eliminated that backlog, and now we'll go back to using Dietz on a more regular
Is that so they can create a new backlog?
No. We're in the process of resolving the issue that we have with the other contractor, and we're going to be putting out another procurement for the CD transcriptions.
You ready, Michael?
Yes.
Did you believe that, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a motion to approve the procurements? Is there a second? All in favor? The procurements are approved. Now you're up, Michael.
Okay. Bogdan, hold on for everything because I'd like to really be expeditious here. I'm going to talk about the Fulton Street Transit, and we're not going to have anything on Fulton Street, right? Just so everyone knows, we have actually established the permanent power at both the Transit Center and the Corbin Building, and the importance of this milestone is to allow us to start testing various systems earlier, so that's actually in anticipation of the customer service that will come in 2014. This summer, we are going to open a new entrance at 150 William Street for the Twin Tree, and in the fall we'll have an elevator that will be installed at 129 Fulton. Again, these are new things that will make the operation at Fulton Street better. One of the things that is important to mention is the fact that we are developing a public-private partnership for the Fulton Street Transit Center. We're going to go out with an RFP for a master lessee that will then manage our retail and optimize the mix, as well as economizing on maintenance and operational costs. That RFP is being developed between MTACC with MTA Real Estate, and clearly with a lot of support from New York City Transit. And we expect to issue the RFP late spring and have an award sometime at the beginning of 2013. The project is proceeding on schedule, and we expect to open it June 2014. Is on budget, and that's about it. The Second Avenue subway, as again, and I think we have just a couple of Second Avenue. We have on the northern part, we had for years a huge structure there that has been dismantled, so people now can complain less about looking over. It's much better. The arches, the waterproofing, as well as a lot of the work in concreting is progressing well. At this point, we have installed part of the decking. We are actually opening up the road between 95th to 99th Street, and we are actually decking it, creating an additional cavern to complete the station. And what we expect to do there is also we have RFPs out for the finishes for 96th Street, and that's going to happen. We expect to open the bids probably end of February or March, sometime in March. The excavation on the 70th cavern is continuing, and actually I just dropped a little leaflet on your desk. We are actually conducting residence tours underground once a month. Actually, this Saturday we had 3 tours. We had 75 people attending, and that turns out to be a terrific thing for the residents that now can see actually that what we're doing below ground while we are to a certain degree disrupting their lives above ground. So at least there is a reason for doing that, and they're able to see it, and we got real positive results. Again, that we have done, we are continuing our tunneling work below ground, and that's about the Second Avenue. Again, we continue to maintain our schedule and budget as well. Number 7 line, we have ongoing work. It turns out that December was a good month for pouring concrete. In fact, it was consistent on all our jobs, on our projects that constitute the overall number 7. We actually pour about 10% of all the concrete, so it seems to be doing well in that area. We do have some challenges, particularly on Site J, in terms of maintaining our overall schedule for that particular project. There are issues that had to do with Con Ed that at this time are behind us, but that kind of pushed us a bit behind. We actually working right now to see how we can recover that. And the system and finishes contract that is on board actually started to install the invert slab in the tunnel. So when we are looking very carefully to see how we are proceeding, we are on budget, and at this point we hope that we are on track in terms of the opening. We will have trains running in December of 2013, but we still have to make sure that these trains, we're not sure if they're revenue or not, and in February we'll have a little better understanding of where we are with that. But we have trains running on the 2013. I think that that's about it. Any questions?
Our board member, John Banks at Con Ed, is a very highly placed officer there, and he can solve any Con Ed problem. So feel free, to use him extensively.
Mr. Hiranachano is not shy about picking up the phone.
Any more questions for Michael? All right, we're back to Tom for service changes.
Moving on to service change proposals, we have 2 staff summaries that are brought to the committee for information only. Our first action is to reroute the BX5 to operate via Bruckner Boulevard between Crosby Avenue and Pelham Bay Park, 6th station, to reduce travel times and improve reliability. In conjunction with this change, we will use the savings achieved with the faster routing to extend the BX24 from the Pelham Bay Park number 6 station along Westchester Avenue to Westchester Square. This change is cost neutral. Our second action involves bus schedule changes planned for implementation in April of this year, and routing bus schedule changes include adjustments based on the ridership guidelines that we have had in years for here at New York City Transit, and we're proposing 82 schedule changes on 63 routes. The overall net cost will be a savings of a little less than $750,000.
Are we going to discuss those in detail at the bus committee?
I don't believe so. But, Peter? I mean, what basically these actions are, as if you remember when we first took the series of actions in June of 2010, we've had in running a dialogue with Councilmember Vaca and other elected officials in the area as to how we can fine-tune under a zero-sum game changes, slight revisions to those changes to minimize the impacts, and this is probably the last in a series of 3 of those changes. Is that about right, Peter?
The Bronx change.
Yes.
I'm referring to the so-called seasonal changes. Are we going to discuss those in the bus committee, or is this the time?
I'm here. You can talk.
All right. Well, way back when, after the June 27th, 2010 major bus service cuts, we predicted that there would be a fall-off of ridership due to making some of those routes far less usable for the public, and obviously the ridership has continued to decline. This group of seasonal service cuts is not revenue neutral. There are far more cuts than there are additions to service, and we were told at the time that anytime you did bus changes, they would be revenue neutral. So, aside from my saying that this group is not revenue neutral,
what we committed to on revenue neutral were changes to the service cuts that were implemented in June of 2010, where we were trying to respond to impacts. We wanted to make sure the board knew we were doing nothing to add service that it increased cost and worked against the budget. The application of the standard routinized application of service guidelines to provide for increased service when ridership increases or decreases and ridership decreases within the guidelines that are allowed without board approval are what these are.
Well,
that's what these are.
How long a period of ridership decreases was examined before making this group of cuts?
We come to you 3 times a year with these kinds of service changes. We look at routes on weekdays about every 2 years. So,
well, the summer stuff we know we expect, but this is not summer we're talking about.
These are normal changes, and even the ones that go in June are normal changes. There's additional adjustments that are made seasonally in the summer, but these are year-round based on ridership checks that have occurred in the last 6 to 8 months. But in generally, there are longer-term trends on these routes that are either going down or there are increases as well. And this is a reallocation of services, but in this case, it primarily due to trends in certain parts of the city, it's a net negative.
Oh, there's no question it's a net negative. And I know that you come to us 3 times a year, but I'm wondering how long a route had to be examined before it was determined this was a good time to cut. Was it from the last time you visited us, or was it from 2 times ago, or?
I'll try again. We look at every route in the system, weekday route. Actually, we look at every express route annually because express routes are very sensitive to ridership changes per bus trip. We look at local bus routes every other year on weekdays, and on weekends it's more like every little over 4 years. So any of the routes you're seeing now are routes that we last looked at 2 years ago, but they're based on checks that were done within the last 6 to 9 months.
Well, I actually see some routes on here that have been cut much more frequently than that, but I'll let Chuck go next.
Mr. Chairman, first let me ask, have the local community boards in the areas affected been consulted in connection with these changes?
We notify when we're doing these changes, but again, this is a normal application of our guidelines.
I don't care whether it's normal. Have you notified the community boards of these changes before they go into effect?
Yes.
And solicited their opinion?
Yes.
Well, I can tell you that community board number 8 has not been consulted, and I doubt that 7 in the Bronx has been consulted, and I'd ask you to look at it again.
Chuck, I'm co-chair of Community Board 7 in Manhattan's Transportation Committee. We have not been consulted.
Mr. Chairman, I move that this matter be laid over to next month so that in the interim, the community boards in the City of New York are consulted so there can be input from riders. Take a look at this. Just in one portion of the Bronx, you are increasing the headway, thereby reducing the service. On the Bronx 1 and 2, on the Bronx 11, on the Bronx 33, and it goes on and on. The community boards have a right to be consulted, and you, Mr. Chairman, as a former community board chairman, know that.
You have a pornographic memory after all. Okay, let's see if we can't work up some sort of guidelines for the future as to how we at least inform community boards about any of these changes in the future.
Lois is head of government affairs at New York City Transit.
As we do when we go through the schedule changes several times a year, we notify every community board and every elected official in the City of New York. The letters for these changes went out January 12th. I don't have everybody's copy of the letter, but I have the letter.
See if we can't prepare some sort of report for Andrew and for Charles about exactly how we let everybody know in advance about these service changes. I know that these are for information purposes only, because if the board dictated every schedule change, we would be here even longer than we are now. But at least we can set up the mechanism and the program for informing everybody as to what happens so that we're all perfectly clear about it. And maybe you can give us a report at our next meeting about how this is actually structured.
May I also add, and I thank you for that, may I also add that we, in whatever communication we issue to community boards, ask them, do you have any views? That we do that, because I can tell you on the basis of my quick check with community boards, tain't happened.
Okay.
Lois, what does the letter say?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Fred.
Mr. Chairman, I also appreciate your willingness to clarify this. As some variant of this very conversation has occurred from time to time in the short time I have been on this board. So to get some clarity on it once and for all would be a nice thing, especially in as much as I read about the Bronx service change in the newspaper, which is very nice of them to do. But I think what's frustrating some of us is not knowing the full extent of it, and when there seems to be a service change within guidelines that is not neutral, that's a service change that some might argue should come before the board.
Gotcha. Okay. See if you can't do that for our next meeting, if possible. Have I forgotten anything else?
We will do what has been asked here today. I do need to make sure people understand some things. We are bringing forward generally items like this in advance of when a pick would need to occur and when the bus operators would have to pick the work that they would do. If we delay some of these, and there's a reason to delay this, to have a dialogue, that's fine. It may impact the delay as to when we can implement those service changes. There are pluses and minuses here. There are some service changes that are increases to service because there are exacerbated loading conditions, and we will have to hold those up. I don't believe, but it's up to the board to decide whether we want to just go forward with pluses and hold on minuses. But then we would find ourselves in a position budget-wise that we would be squeezed very hard. But we will come back to the board next week with an assertion as to what we've done in terms of outreach and any kind of further discussion on what these cuts are. These are part of the normal process changes that the board guidelines that have been approved for years. We are not going outside of that.
We're just interested in you describing to us the procedure and the protocol for making these changes.
Absolutely.
Don't get too excited.
Okay.
Did I forget anything else, anybody? Any more business to come before the meeting? Is there a motion to adjourn? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much.